Who is really an official Republican in Idaho? Well, we could host a debate for the entire show or several shows about who is a real Republican in Idaho, but it really depends on your perspective. What am I talking about? Well, you have people that use the term rhino, Republican in name only. They seem to be a call out from different factions of the Republican Party. Depending on who you talk to, some in the Republican are too extreme to be real Republicans. Some are too moderate to be real Republicans. Some are simply a wolf in sheep's clothing, not Republicans at all. Well, whatever commentary you have on the Republicans in Idaho, Idahoans have the opportunity to register with whatever party they want, regardless of their views. And being a registered Republican comes with the perk of voting in the closed GOP primary. The Republican primary was closed in Idaho by the party, the GOP, to prevent outside political groups from messing with their votes. Understandable. Well, another step was taken over the summer at the GOP state convention. The Idaho GOP, they passed a rule requiring people who want to vote Republican in next year's primary, 2024, they had to do one of two things. If they were unaffiliated, they had to make sure to register as a Republican by December 30th of this year, the year before the May primary. But if they were already registered with another party and they want to vote as a Republican, they would have to wait a full year after that December 30th deadline to be considered a registered Republican. So to ensure the new rules are enforced, Idaho GOP Chair Dorothy Moon sent a letter to the Secretary of State, Phil McGrain. This letter from GOP Chair Dorothy Moon to Idaho Secretary of State Phil McGrain refers to a recent Idaho Supreme Court case, the Idaho Republican Party versus former Secretary of State Ben Usursa. It affirmed political parties' rights to establish their own rules around voter affiliation. The letter formally requests that Secretary of State McGrain provide guidance to all 44 county clerks in Idaho to enforce the new Republican Party affiliation rules uniformly. Chair Moon argues that this is needed to uphold the Idaho Republican Party's rights, maintain integrity of the electoral process, and align with the recent court precedent and the First Amendment. The letter wraps up from Moon requesting a formal written response within 10 days, acknowledging the Secretary of State's commitment to enforcing the new Republican affiliation rules with all county clerks. Just one problem. The Secretary of State doesn't believe the law in Idaho allows him to do that. Secretary of State Phil McGrain sent his own letter back to Chair Moon. In it, McGrain explains that after consulting with the Attorney General's office, he has determined that implementing these new rules are outside his legal authority as Secretary of State. His role is to administer Idaho's election laws as passed by the legislature, not create new policies prompted by party politics. Secretary of State says he's limited to administering the party affiliation and primary participation statuses as written in Idaho Code. McGrain writes to Moon saying that while the Republican Party can set its own internal membership rules, the executive branch cannot unilaterally act on these rules. Election law changes, he says, are the legislature's role. But it appears that whoever sends out the Idaho GOP newsletter on Friday, they didn't care for that opinion, or they didn't get the memo from the Secretary of State. Or maybe this was an auto email that went out on its own. But anyway, today the Idaho GOP, they wrote to their membership in a newsletter, quote, "A reminder for Idahoans, in order to participate in the Republican presidential caucus on March 2nd, you must register to vote and affiliate with the Republican Party before December 31st, 2023. Something's got to give." And according to Idaho's Secretary of State, the contents, that specific part of the newsletter, appears to be incorrect. Anyways, I reached out for clarification to have a conversation with Chair Dorothy Moon for comments on the story, really anything. She did not respond to my email, letting her know well in advance that we wanted to cover this story in depth today and we wanted to include her thoughts. So again, she never responded, but the invitation remains open to Chair Moon.